Hey guys, welcome to episode 4 of the Zanaku Masterclass. This episode is called Ability Usage, Momentum, and Items. So, all three of those things together, what do you think that it means? Let's look at it in the case of Quake Champions and Time Limit Duel is a lot to do with momentum and being able to stack the items together in the most efficient way possible. So, what does that really mean? That means to be able to take as minimal damage as possible, and most of the time, and also to output the maximum in which your opponent will be at the highest deficit and you are at the highest peak. So we're going to look at a few situations like we talked about in the previous videos of what they're trying to do and how that will look, but we're going to simulate like how to necessarily create that. So as you can see, pick up the mega. If we have time to deny the lights, we want to do that too. Be able to pick up the heavy and also try to kill our opponent on the lower part of the map. That is kind of the case of what full control would kind of look like, where there's no lights because we've denied them. We've somehow managed to take both major items. Our opponent doesn't have a chance because we've somehow managed to take everything, and then if we want to fight them, we want to make sure we do it in an efficient way that we can maintain control based on the spawns. Now, spawns we can do in another video too. It's very safe to just always assume that they spawn kind of the opposite side to where you're standing. So for example, here I've kind of cancelled this spawn, they maybe spawn there. So sometimes when we're fighting, we're trying to kill people, we're actually trying to do it in a way which would, not necessarily always give them that spawn. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but we can, avoid those kind of situations. Now, let's look at like what abilities and items, what does it mean? So let's switch to something like Ranger. So what Quake Champions does nicely compared to other games is it allows you to not necessarily have the control. Now this is kind of beautiful thing and also super frustrating at the same time, but you know what, you gotta take the good with the bad. And what this does is that even if you are out of control, and this is a nice part of the game, is that you can use your utility. So let's say Ranger in this case, he has a damage ability, and we can kind of combo in a way which is going to allow us to retake control. So let's say that our opponent is in full control, we're fighting over the mega, but let's say we get like a nice spam rocket or something like this, or we're able to kind of like, while they're picking up the items, we're doing enough damage that's going to allow us to now, while they pick up the mega, maybe pick this up as well. So we're able to kind of now, we're able to actually use the resources on the map to slow down the momentum. Now, if we didn't have abilities and everybody's a VQ3 character, it'd be very hard to be able to retake control. That's why in Quake Live, you could just pick up as many items as you want, and you could also run away because both players were both the same speed, so you couldn't really do that. In this game, you have characters with varying speeds, and this is where it gets interesting because, like I said in the previous video with light and heavy champs, light champions, now you can start doing damage, you can start going to the other items, maybe slow them down a little bit, depending on what you can get away with. And so, like I was saying before, we're going to use our abilities to kind of be able to retake control based on that. One way we can create the advantage is through damage, or through the damage of our ability. We can actually purely do it even with just weapons too. We've even seen Razy when he played a few weeks ago when he did his no ability challenge, and actually managed to win quite a lot of games purely based off weapons. It goes to show that even if a player has full control, with no ability usage, no movement advantage, you're still able to win the game. Well, how did he do it? And that's because he has such a fundamental understanding that the weapons do so much damage in this game of how to utilize them. Again, unfortunately, we can't put everything into one video because it would be quite complicated, but in another video, we'll eventually talk about how we can actually use positioning and advantage to actually create a discrepancy in the momentum, to be able to stop the momentum. So another situation, instead of using damage, is we can now use speed. So let's say our opponent, who's at full control, let's say he's Ranger or he's Keel, he's slower than us, whatever it may be. And even though he has the capacity to run around the map and do things, we're able to now use our position, because we're going to have better position as he's picking up the items, to kind of manipulate them. To kind of slow them down while we always have better position. And then this also gives us a chance to, like I was saying before, to pick up the smaller armors, and then eventually, hopefully, is what we're after, is that we've stopped them as they pick up the items, which is kind of stopping the natural flow of the rotation. Now we're able to stop them. Oh, okay, the heavy's going to spawn, even though it's already here now. It's going to spawn in 5 seconds. Okay, cool. We've got 5 seconds to be able to defend the item. And now you're going to start to be what I would say is developing a range. You're able to now understand is like some players, what they like to do is they'll risk it. They'll risk if there's 5 seconds for the item, they'll still push you. And this is where the creativity of the game really comes in. So from that, we can now understand that the range that some players have is based on their capacity of the champion and their skill set. So let's look at an example. Let's say I'm playing Anarchy in this case, and I have very good movement to be able to swing into the item fast enough that allows me to be able to push the player off the heavy. Or let's look at another example. Some players are very good with heavy machine gun, very good with rail. Obviously, this map doesn't have a rail, or very good with LG. Let's say if a player is standing on the heavy, 5 to 10 seconds early, and even though that they don't have the advantage, let's say the player down, they have the player down here already has the stack advantage, but the person who's playing the Anarchy is so good at LGing that they're able to push you off, right? And what we're trying to understand here is that now you can actually use your skill set for what you're good at as a player to be able to create advantages and to change momentum. And this is where the game gets fun, because now you don't have to play so strictly. You can start doing things which are within your boundaries. Now, where does this kind of become a problem? This is kind of can be a problem because we start to rely on things. And if you rely on things too much, you're going to start to not be able to be dynamic as a player. And that's probably one of the best things to be able to do in Duel, is to have a varying range of what you can do. If you were very good at every weapon and you were able to move perfectly, well, you're going to have the most opportunities to be able to change control, get it back into your favor. And once you have the control, you have the stack to be able to move around the map freely. And moving around the map freely means you can take all the damage you want risk-free, or with less risk, rather. The last point I wanted to reiterate for this video is regarding the spawns and what that means for momentum. So we looked at all the ways to being able to retake control with speed, with damage, or just using even the weapons themselves based on position to slow down players coming from item to item, so that eventually we can get an item and take control back, while we have time before the item spawns. Now, the last thing we want to look at is the spawns. The spawns have a big impact because obviously, depending on how we kill the player and how much stack we have, all has an impact of when we're going to be able to maintain control. Now, unfortunately, the only thing I can really say about this is that you have to be aware of it. Unfortunately, we go through hundreds of scenarios of what that looks like, and how to necessarily attain it. But the main thing that you want to be looking for is, like I was saying at the very start of this video, to kill the player in the most efficient way possible. That is, convenient, but also doesn't allow them to spawn right next to the item. So there are some scenarios where you actually don't want to kill your opponent. Because that'll mean that you're able to maintain control a little bit better and then kill them 30 seconds later. Or sometimes they'll be able to get away, but you have the bigger favor there, which is you have full map control, and then you're able to combo frags a little bit heavier together. But if I'm fighting over someone of the Mega and I take huge damage on his 5 on 5 HP, well, seems logical. I'm not going to be able to really combo much there. But if we're able to keep our opponents low, and also be able to kill them in a way, let's say we're killing them over here. This is a pretty common one because they spawn on the Mega. Let's say they spawn over here, and then I have enough stack, maybe not to necessarily get the item, but I can at least defend it. I could do damage onto it because I'm the player that survived. I have the weapons, and maybe, I have my ability, who knows. Like I said, there are heaps of varying scenarios. But here you just have to use basic logic. It's like, am I able to stop a player who spawns there? Or if I just, maybe my opponent did really well. Maybe they actually did a lot of damage here and I'm not able to. Okay, sweet. They get the Mega. We get this. We try to fight for it. And now we're doing the same thing again. But this time, the heavy spawns in 15 seconds or something along those lines. How are we going to be able to stop them 15 seconds? Are we able to do that? And if we're going to surrender it, how are we going to, rotate again to the other side of the map to be able to stop them? So you're always kind of playing at this this arm's length distance to be able to eventually retake control, so you have control. Like I said, the master plan for momentum is we want to be able to create a rotation in which allows us to kill our opponents in the most efficient way possible and receiving the least amount of damage, which allows us to continue the rotation and basically push our opponent all around the map where they're unable to efficiently trade back. And eventually when we do that, well, it's going to make for a really easy game because, we have the items. We can take the damage, whereas our opponent obviously cannot, because if they take too much damage, they die. Okay, guys. Thanks for watching episode 4, and I'll see you on episode 5. Cheers, boys.